yeah. 'Cause I do this for my family. You raised up and nurtured the man in me. I've been out here and I've been planting seeds in my garden, watering my money trees, yeah. 'Cause I do this for my family.
Welcome. So this is the second time I've ever spoken in front of people before. Last time I did what was an introduction to the philosophy, the foundational philosophies of crypto, and kind of the origins of how Bitcoin grew out of the emergence of, well, the coalesce of these foundational philosophies. And now tonight we'll look at what is money, and it's a profound philosophical question, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand exactly what money is or how to comprehend its functions. So we're going to look at the history. Well, here we'll get into it. One second. So crypto philosophy, we ask some questions like what is value, what is governance, what is identity, what is law? And philosophy, if you need a reminder, there's metaphysics, what is real, epistemology, what is true, ethics, what is good. And keep these types of questions and ideas in mind as we go through the presentation. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit quick. So the origins of money, qualities, possibilities, we'll look tonight at the sort of history of money. There's some debates about the origins. There's the Austrian version, which is kind of that money grew out of the problem called the coincidence of wants, where there needed to be a tangible store of value that could be exchanged for goods across time and space. And then there's another guy named David Graeber, who maybe someone brought that up in the last talk, who says that the money actually originated out of debt. And there's a kind of a debate, and I leave at the end of the presentation a couple of essays that you can read if you're interested in Graeber's work and the debunking of his work. And we'll also look at the qualities of money, what makes sound money, its functions and characteristics, and then we'll look at today's money, comparing, because money is such a big idea, it's almost like as complex as language, and in some ways money may have been the reason why we have written language today. There's a couple of theories behind that as a way of recording who owed what to who or the quantity of things. So what is money? Money aims to solve the problem of how to move economic value across space and time. And this is kind of the goal of money. And money is not currency, which a lot of people get confused about. Currency is the paper. It has no intrinsic value, you know, the euros that you use today. But the money is the value that it represents. And we're going to see in the history where this separation happened. And to understand money, we need to understand the history and the qualities of it. So this is how we see money today. This is like a very common perspective. This is like how we choose to use money. Maybe you've seen this before in studying like basic economics. You can use it to save, spend, invest, and give. And we do this every day. And throughout your entire life, maybe you're saving up for a house, a wedding, maybe you give, maybe it's your inheritance that you're going to pass on to your family. We spend money all the time, and then also investing money. And investing today is probably even more important than it was in the past, because we have now fiat currency, which is inflation, and people are trying to outcompete the inflation of their national currencies. And so this is possibly why investing is such a dominant topic in crypto and money, when in fact it may not need to be as big as it is today. So does this make sense to everybody? Are you familiar with all of these common ways of using money? And then this is what money is. This is the Trinitarian formula of money. So you have space-time, information, and energy. And money is all three of these things, but all three of these things are not the same. So money as information, think of everything has like a price or a value, and it can be subjective, but we can apply it to it. And that's another sort of Austrian lens on money, is that value is subjective, but to put a price onto something is the information, and that information becomes part of what money is. And then the energy is like the value that's been put into something, and then when it was exchanged for something else, that money can represent the energy that was put into that work, labor, service, knowledge, or good. And then also space-time, so money should also serve as like a store of value and be able to transcend time as a medium or a storage of just the value that it represents. So some of the things with energy is pretty interesting because money can actually redirect because money is such a social thing, money can actually, when you apply value to something, money can redirect where the focus of the society or culture can actually go, if that makes sense. So how to say, like it can actually redirect the energy or focus of an entire culture or a society. And so it's something quite powerful. This is the sort of social and technological evolution of money. So originally it started off barter and gift economies. So this would be people trading goods. And again, if you look at David Graeber's book, 5,000 Years of Debt, he says that money didn't come from this origin, but again, this is an Austrian version. And one of the arguments against it would be, if you go to any public school here in Barcelona, you'll see kids are trading Pokemon cards or bracelets or things like that. We use trade and barter all the time, even as young kids. So this idea that even a child applies value to the objects that they own, their private property, and they barter and trade using these items. And then if you go to some of the earlier forms of money was primitive commodities, and these things were like stones, shells, and beads. And they were very local and very cultural in their economies. And they weren't, how to say, like there's a lot of stories where maybe a culture had like beads, glass beads, the agri beads, and they were easily reproduced. So if they're easy to counterfeit, you can actually destroy the economy that they were used in. So it's part of the history of money is this sort of money replacing other money because it's actually a better version of that money, which is kind of why we're telling this story through a crypto lens, because this is going to lead up to Bitcoin. So just keep that in mind that there's this sort of story playing out in history of money and its evolution, and it's very social and technological. So then after the sort of primitive monies, there was kind of this era of precious metals. And in fact, a lot of the money we still have today is still backed by gold, silver, or maybe oil is also another commodity that is, have you ever heard of the Petrodollar? And these mediums were minted into coinage. So you ever seen a coin with like the ridges on it? You know, like there's also something that happens to these coins where there's debasement. And debasement is when the coins are actually like filed down and people save that to mint a new coin. And so there were problems with some of the precious metals. Number one would be like portability. So how do you transport lots of gold? You'd have to have like a warship, and there's it's property that can actually be taken from you. And gold and things like that are also difficult to divide, so the divisibility. So then these problems with precious metals went into representative things like certificates or paper currency. And these banknotes or promissory notes allowed for portability over space. So now you can transport large quantities of money relatively easier, but the problem here is trust or the third-party trust. So how do you know that the certificate actually represents value that's stored in a bank somewhere else? How do you verify that? And then to solve this issue with trust, central governments formed central banks. The biggest, well, the one that kind of controls the whole monetary system is the Federal Reserve in the United States. And so to answer the trust issue, they create a central bank. And now through different steps and acts of the central bank, they eliminated the backing of gold and silver into these currencies. And now today what we have is a fiat currency, which is something relatively new, to be honest. I mean, maybe we've been using fiat, well, pure fiat since 1971, so it's not even that long. It's actually kind of an experiment if you really think about it. And then the technological evolution of fiat money became plastic, right? So credit cards, debit cards, and then digital. So this would be something like PayPal, sending money across using the internet as the rail to send and make payments. But again, it's a digital version of the fiat currency. So it still is kind of, it's censorable. I mean, we're seeing that now, that the entire banking system is not censoring, but preventing payments happening in an entire country due to some political conflict. And then in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto released the white paper, Bitcoin was born, and now we have what I called programmable money. And it has certain properties that I think are not just I think, there's lots of people who think that Bitcoin might be a better form of money. So again, this talk is going to be more, you're going to hear a lot about Bitcoin, gold, and USD. I know there's lots of other monies out there, but again, it's such a big topic, we want to stay focused. So maybe you ask, what is digital versus programmable money? Digital money, this is again like PayPal, the sort of software banks. It's a centralized ledger, right? And the app exists outside of it, or the logic, and it's automated. It's not really programmed, and that's called automation. And then a definition for on blockchain, payments, or smart contracts, they go through what's called atomicity, which means that they will happen guaranteed. So it's a computer system, and there's no way to, once you send a payment, if it's going to either work or it's not going to work. And if it does work, there's no way to reverse the transaction, or at least not yet. And so it's two very, very different systems, digital, but we're now going into programmable. Some people call this designer money. Maybe you come across it. So again, money from barter to banknotes to Bitcoin. The lesson here is that there's money that is harder than money that was before it, and it replaces or destroys those currencies. And this is a quote from the Bitcoin Standard, if anybody has read it. It talks a lot about this history of money, and probably what Bitcoin is doing now is eating away at the value of the other monetary systems. Are being, they're transferring into Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. So qualities, this is what makes sound money. So this actually goes back to Aristotle. Aristotle was a philosopher, but he didn't come up with this per se, but something very similar. So that money has to have a unit of measure, medium of exchange, and a store of value. And then the Austrians, Karl Menger and the other Austrian guys, they studied this, and it's not like a real, it's not defined like this. It's very subjective. You'll find it's not subjective. It's just you can interpret it differently. You'll find some people say, oh, there's 9 properties of money, and I went with these ones because it's, I think, simple to understand. So money can be, and actually this order is incorrect. Money usually starts off as a store of value, right? So you're trying to take your labor, your effort, your energy, and you're trying to store it into an item, like money, and then the next one would be unit of measure, and then they would become a medium of exchange. So the order here is reversed. But as a unit of measure, we use money as a way of valuing all things that are around us all the time, and we do this every day. And even your own actions and collective human action can be determined by the sort of perceived value of something, but it's measured in money. Does that make sense? Yeah, so You can actually steer the direction of an entire culture. This was kind of like what I mentioned earlier about the energy. You can actually, as society goes towards an aim, we measure that using money. Anyways, money as a medium of exchange, meaning that it can be, it's portable across space. So if somebody has an asset that you want, you can actually think of money maybe as like a claim on all property that exists. It's kind of like meta property. It allows you to purchase property into the future, but any type of property. So it's kind of the outsourcing of the problem of the coincidence of want, right? So it eliminates the, how to say, like, you don't have to have exactly what the other person wants that you're exchanging with. You're now free from that, and you can decide how you want to exchange it, but in the future, which is a powerful idea. So a store of value, good money should actually have a store of value across time. So the fiat currencies that we are using today, you always hear about inflation or decline in purchasing power. And the money that historically had the greatest store of value has always been gold. And you can see this in the gold price charts. There was a book, Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. He says, and I think this is probably kind of true, is that 1 ounce of gold could always get you a nice suit, even if you went back to like Roman times. And 1 ounce of silver could always get you a steak dinner. So it just shows that the purchasing power of these two commodities have been able to, over thousands of years, maintain somewhat of similar purchasing power. So it's important, right, to have a store of value. And then the characteristics of money. Money should be durable. This meaning that why gold? Well, gold, it can get wet and not be destroyed, unlike salt, right? So when people are using salt, salt could be, well, I guess you'd have to evaporate the water or whatever. It has to be durable and, well, here we go. Divisible, so money should be able to be divided up into small fractions, or be able to take small fractions and recollect them back together into one other form. So divisible. This is also probably similar to like fungible, right? So like the same material should be able to be collected and split apart. Portable, so this is the idea that money should be able to transcend space. And that was one of the problem with gold, and that's why they moved to the certificates like we talked about earlier, and then into fiat currency was this problem of portability. So, and then an important aspect also is money is how easy it is to manufacture more money. And in Bitcoin, everybody knows that there's the halvening, these sort of mining rewards that are distributed to the miner who discovers the next block. In gold, it takes quite a bit of capital to probably start a mine or get it into a mine, so there's an expense or a cost to put more gold onto the market. The inflation rate for gold, I think, is on average 1.5% is what I found. And then there's, well, let's see, move on. Recognizable, so this means that the money should be easily be able to be verified by whoever is receiving the amount. So recognizable would be like something, can you verify that this gold is real gold? And back before we were using, well, fiat currency, people actually would have to test the quality of the silver and the gold, and these were jewelers that would do that type of work, and that work is actually kind of expensive. So then there was an expense onto trying to verify if the money was what it claimed to be. But then there's also other qualities. In this case, I compare Bitcoin, gold, and fiat. And so there's like a whole array, but not the ones that I showed you first were what makes good or sound or hard money. And the thing with sound money was when they could take like silver and they'd maybe hit it on the floor and it had like a certain resonant sound. Or hard money. Have you ever heard of cold hard cash? That expression? Cold hard cash means they didn't want the paper money, they want like the cold, the hard. They're talking about the actual gold nugget, not the certificate that it's backed by. So here we can compare. This might be a little bit subjective, right? Like adoption. Maybe Bitcoin is adopted enough already, or I tried to put here benefits and shortcomings because they all try to achieve what they can, but if you look at fiat, I put a lot of red X's here because there's a problem with the portability across time, and so this is again the loss of purchasing power due to inflation because it's so easy for the government to just flip the switch or the interest rates, and actually it's not the government, it's the central bank or the Federal Reserve that does this. Yeah?
Could it be that the more cryptocurrency you create, the less the companies issue scarce?
Possibly, but it won't affect Bitcoin.
Yeah, talking about
Yeah.
only Bitcoin, but the more currency we are creating.
Yeah, sure. If people decide that it has value, why not? Yeah. But yeah, you can see the whole crypto market cap is growing, not constantly growing. It inflates and, but yeah, I guess so. But in the case, just looking strictly at Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is designed to be a monetary system, not a smart contract platform, not an identity, not a DAO, not a whatever. But if you're talking about blockchain as an industry and that growing as an industry, I guess there's value in that, but I don't know if those cryptocurrencies would serve necessarily as good or sound money because they have the inflation rate. I mean, they can change the monetary system of Ethereum, for example, and they do. They've done it several times. But with Bitcoin, there's always only ever 21 million, and we know out into the future exactly how those new Bitcoins will be produced. And then if you look at something like gold, the reason why gold is such a good store of value is the interest or the inflation rate has been almost the same over such a long period of time. People can then imagine the value of their gold. They call it stock to flow, which is like the model that they use. So it's how much the existing supply plus every year how much extra gets put on top of that. And it's if you look up stock to flow to Bitcoin and the correlation of the price, it's really interesting. I didn't put it in the presentation, but I encourage anyone to take a look at that. Auditable. This is an important one too. Like you can see on a block explorer exactly who owns what, where. Not who, but you know that wallet has that amount, and it's not corruptible. In fiat, we don't actually know. Is what I found out. Is that they have different M1, M0, M2 ways of measuring the amount of capital or dollars that are inside the banking system, but it's changing all the time. So there's no real way of auditing the entire system in one flash, which I think is kind of a cool feature of Bitcoin. So here's Bitcoin's programmed monetary inflation. We're still there, but you can see because it's programmable money, it's designed this way and will continue to work like a clock forever, to be honest. And here's the inflation. So the inflation rate is always getting cut down due to what was determined from the original vision of Bitcoin. But then we compare that to the Federal Reserve asset balance. This is just the last 10 years. And they've issued 7 times more money since 2020 than the past 20 years, which is kind of incredible. I got that from you, Adrian. So again, does this affect your inflation or your purchasing power? Yeah. This is actually from the Federal Reserve. If you go to Fed St. Louis. The which one?
The Bitcoin inflation.
This is issuance. So it's again, the inflation, I didn't put it here, I should have. Bitcoin, I think, is like 1.7 right now or something like that. So again, but it's declining. there's an inflation rate, and you can calculate it for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is purely maths, right? And other currencies, other monetary systems are not.
But inflation means the price of goods.
No, but I think you should call it insurance because it's confusing because when you talk about inflation, people have
Yeah, sure.
purchasing power. You're only talking about how much Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
You mean the old-fashioned type of inflation? It's what we used to call every time the central bank was printing money.
Yeah, it's kind of a term that gets thrown around a lot, no?
Exactly. Now,
Yeah, this would be,
inflation has swapped its meaning somehow.
yeah,
Back in the day, what you said.
yeah, is issuance, yeah,
Because we call inflation because for fiat money, every time they print more,
yeah,
the entire base, all the other units lose value.
Yeah.
It's not the case whether you talk for gold or Bitcoin. The issuance of it doesn't really affect per se the value of all the other units.
Right.
That's why gold has proven it's not that it's got a stable inflation. It's just that despite its issuance rate and increasing at more or less the population.
yeah.
growth,
But the point is, I guess it's scarcity, right? So it has a sort of predictable level of scarcity. People are able to perceive 20 years from now exactly what Bitcoin's going to do and probably get a sense of what gold is going to do. Other monetary metals like silver, because silver is used for manufacturing, if there's a demand for silver, more people will go out and mine silver. And that actually has an effect on the supply, and it affects the price. So there's an argument that silver may not be as strong a currency as gold just due to some of that supply actually feeding into an industry. And again, that's the stock to flow if you're interested in looking at that. But again, I'm not a monetary expert. This is just kind of like my own personal research and information from other people. And then this is purchasing power. I got this from the same website. They have like all the data. And you can see, well, I mean, if you were, 100 years old and you had $25,000, today you would have $1,000 in purchasing power. So the people who go into cryogenics, when they wake up, they're going to be fucking broke. So yeah, it's kind of a sad story, to be honest, because people are spending their entire life, and this is just USD. There's countries way, way worse. This is hyperinflation, which this is measured by a guy named Hanke. I link a video to this where he goes through his information here, but these are all currencies that have failed due to hyperinflation. And I think there's 62 of them, and the data goes back, I think 100 years or something like that. But these are the only ones that died from hyperinflation, but it's a pretty wild history, because these are people's lives. These are entire nation states that just overnight fail. And he can calculate the inflation rate by the hour. Some of them are so insane.
In this case, it's inflation as in the one people refer to as in what they can buy with.
Yeah, this is more like purchasing power as inflation. Yeah, in the video he explains it's all empirical data. He says there are other currencies, but because there's no data for him to feel comfortable, I guess, publishing that work, he doesn't do it. But it's just kind of, I don't know, it's sad for me. I don't know, I mean, probably sadder for these people, right? Because you lose, imagine like your entire family, you're building up this wealth and wealth and wealth, and it's just destroyed because your national currency, that there's someone corrupt in power, and they want to inflate the monetary supply or strip away what's backing it, or I don't know, it's a bit crazy. And then another thing that gets mentioned a lot today with money is sort of like time preference. So it would be if you're storing your currency into something that's losing purchasing power, your incentive is to actually spend the money rather than to hold it. And it becomes more efficient or better to actually take on debt rather than save up money to purchase another asset. And there's people who are talking about maybe this incentive is actually what's putting some of our life choices in decline. So if you're just only living for today, you're gonna just consume crappy goods. probably take poor care of your health. You're not going to have like a long-term vision for your life. It's just kind of like the immediacy and anxiety that goes along with it. But imagine if you had put your money into something that was actually a store value over time and actually maybe was deflationary, so that maybe the value actually could go up. You gain purchasing power, then you have sort of a delayed gratification over your purchases, and you might actually care about the planet better. And it's possible that something like Bitcoin, because of its programmed nature to decline its issuance, and maybe it's a greater store of value because it has all the sort of properties of what makes good or sound money, you would make better decisions in the long term. So this would be possibly caring for the planet, caring for others, building dreams that you want to. You can actually make your dreams happen, because I know a lot of my friends who they save but they don't invest, because why should you have to invest or risk your money in Wall Street just to keep the purchasing power of the money that you've already earned? It just doesn't make sense. And then taxation on top of that, I don't know, it's kind of insane. And we wonder, like, if things are becoming more and more efficient, shouldn't our lives be getting easier? But they are not. They don't seem to be that way. And it's kind of this, I don't know, it's a question, really. Does cryptocurrency or money, does it affect your time preference and the choices that you make in your personal life? These were some of the books that I think were, for me, quite helpful in understanding money. These are the Austrians. You have The Origins of Money. This book is from like 1887, and it's a quick read, actually. This is not a quick read, but you only need to read the chapters that are about money, because Ludwig von Mises it's Shakespearean, but it's amazing too. Just the concept of human action, that human action is what drives our choices, and how money is a way of measuring our decisions, how we want to conduct ourselves, the relationships we want to have, how we spend our time. I mean, these are huge, important decisions, but it's almost money that dictates the value of where we're going to, how we act. Anyways. And then Rothbard is great. I think you can read any Rothbard book. He's more contemporary, so it's easier to understand. And this is just the story of what government has done with our money. Because originally money was private. It wasn't held in the power of the state. And the state is just kind of like eaten away at all the responsibilities across healthcare, education, money, you name it. And then, of course, two amazing books. These are pretty easy to read. You can find them as audiobooks, Saifuddin Amos. And he also has a new book. I haven't read it yet, Fiat Standard. So this book uses, since you're here, you probably have an understanding of crypto. He takes the lens of understanding Bitcoin and applies it to fiat. So if you're talking about the issuance over time or a node, like nodes in Bitcoin are distributed. It's a distributed network. In fiat, there's one node at the top that issues money, and then there's other nodes that are central banks and other, well, read the book if you want. 21 Lessons. This is by a guy named Gigi. It's free. You can find this book free online. He walks through kind of the similar argument, and he gets really deep into the time preference if you like those philosophical ideas. This slide shouldn't be here. These were the links, I guess, to some of them. Robert Breedlove is he's like a crypto philosophy guy. He actually has a show called What is Money? So probably a lot of the content here that I wish I had said, he says on his website. And these are the two, if you were into the debate of George Slane, this is a pretty good essay as to why the origins of money didn't actually come out of debt. Steve Hank, if you're into the hyperinflation. And then I guess that's it.
Yeah, you can.
Right. Sorry if I was a bit frazzled. I don't think I prepared as well for this one as I did the other one. But money it's really difficult to encapsulate. There's so many ideas. I didn't even really know where to take the presentation because everybody has a different, money is such an individual thing. It's like a language or a grammar, and we all come to learn it different ways. And my goal tonight was really just to expose some of these ideas that come out of the Austrian school, and just try to expose people to these ideas. Because money, it's a difficult concept to understand, but it's something that affects us like every moment. Even if tonight you buy a beer, you're still deciding that that beer is worth €1, and you've decided with your time, your time is valuable here to come listen to me speak. So anyways, does anybody want to say anything or any questions or
First question.
yeah? Questions?
What are
No?
your thoughts on universal basic income?
I'm not sure it would be a good idea, but this is probably like a very libertarian thing. It's like if you strip away the responsibilities of somebody and you're just kind of feeding them, they may not choose to do things, they may not have the pressure to choose to do things in their life that they wouldn't. But of course, that could be just from the libertarian propaganda that I've read. But yeah, I don't know where that money would come from, because wouldn't it be a redistribution of someone else's wealth? And then that's taxation, and then taxation's theft? And inflation is invisible taxation, so I don't know. I'm not against charity or donations. That I'm 100,000% for, because it's voluntary. Yeah?
What about the digital currency many central banks are creating?
The CB, yeah, I wouldn't use it. I would try not to use it.
They are still centralized, right?
Yeah, it's just a digital version of the monetary systems that we have today, but on the blockchain, so they can track everything. And in fact, it may not even be correct to call it money. At that point, it could just be, because they could program it to be like, okay, you can only spend a certain allocation of this on, well, I like to eat steak. So maybe in the future, because of global warming or something, they say steak is bad. So you can only use a certain percentage of the money. Maybe they say you can only spend it within a certain circumference of your area. I think it just leads to like monetary censorship. Huh?
It's made into your programmable money. In that sense.
Yeah, it's programmable money, but it's not decentralized and it's state ran. So I think that's why I would try not to use it.
I think they are just trying to fight these cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be they're just trying to pose, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a crypto too. It's like what Facebook changed their name to Metaverse, you know? They're just co-opting the technology, they're co-opting the terminology to, again, try to control the sort of narrative, if there is one. And so the problem is a lot of people will probably use it. I don't know. We'll find out, right? Yeah.
Do you think that the crypto can replace the whole fiat monetary system at some point?
No, because that's a question that gets asked to a lot of people who think about this stuff a lot deeper and more knowledgeable than I do. And it seems like consensus is that it's not. You would actually, there's an interesting strategy how you would store your wealth, right? So maybe you keep 90% of your currency, your wealth or value would be trapped inside something like Bitcoin, right? Because it's a store of value over time. And then you would maybe have 5% of the local fiat currency ready to spend, pay for rent. Well, 95% to pay for rent, maybe not, maybe half. No, but this money's going to grow, the Bitcoin one. So.
Like CBDC, like this.
Well, it would just be fiat money. It's just fiat money
Still fiat money.
camouflaged as crypto. That's all it is. There's no mystery behind it.
Already 90% of the fiat money is digital, so
Yeah,
it's just gonna
It's just,
be a different database.
but and you think it's going to be a permissionless, decentralized database that's like immutable? I imagine they'll still be messing with it. I mean, I don't know. We don't know, but my debate would be, yeah, they can develop it. There's nothing, we can't stop them from doing it. But you can opt out or not participate unless they make us.
I don't understand myself, but I heard the answer from Vitalik, I think. He got the same question. He said, no, it won't replace the whole monetary system. You have to go.
Yeah, no, crypto replacing the monetary system, no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think it wants to, even, to be honest. But yeah, there are other people who say like there will only be the Chinese yen, US dollar, gold, and Bitcoin, and all other currencies will fail. I've never heard that the euro will be around longer. I mean, what would you guys use before you had the euro? Every nation had like its own currency, right? Was the peseta, do you think you got a good deal switching to the euro, being Spanish? I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say that they thought they got a good deal.
Some countries benefit,
yeah.
some countries did not.
Right, yeah. Which is a shame. It should, I don't know. I don't know, there got to be someone here who understands this better than me. Yeah?
What do you think about Bitcoin maybe becoming a global reserve currency? There's one country who started to adopt it as legal tender, El Salvador. There's rumors this year a couple of more countries in that area will do the same. How do you see that? Is it possible? What would the North or the rich countries do if the South and the poor would really go to the Bitcoin standard?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of this now, but if you go back to the origins of Bitcoin, the early adopters, the people who invested, I think, were the people who were like, I can't get ahead in the system. I was one of these people. I thought, man, I'm never going to own a house. I'm never going to be able to invest in anything. So I'm going to choose this monetary system to opt out. And I think you're going to see the countries who are frustrated with the monetary global systems be the first to opt into Bitcoin in much the same way that you see individuals doing what happened to Bitcoin's early days. I think it's going to be the same adoption, but just through nation states. But again, it's hard to predict this type of stuff, but yeah, adoption, we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm very hopeful that those countries, I mean, if we go back to the inflation list, that's, if they had Bitcoin, they'd still be around today. Again, I'm so confident in Bitcoin is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to zero, and it's always going to be around. So, and I'm not trying to make an argument for Bitcoin, but I'm making an argument for Bitcoin.
Well, the states that hold the most amount of Bitcoins, ironically, are the US and China.
Yeah, that's strange too, right? And this is, there's also these countries that own a lot of gold, even though things aren't backed by gold. Why don't they get rid of their gold reserves? And then I'm thinking, like, dude, if you're a country with inflation, why don't you just inflate like crazy and just buy Bitcoin? You know what I mean? Keep the printer going and just buy Bitcoin with the money you inflate. And well, the US, I think, is a mining thing, right? The US government only owns Bitcoin when they seize it from somebody.
They see it a lot.
All this money that, especially through the pandemic, which also coincided with the kind of institutional adoption of crypto, and we saw the DeFi shit, and all those top tech companies that got loaded with free money from the printing press, they all bought Bitcoin, because ultimately it's all pension funds and investment funds. So that's what they do. The thing is, the US can do so. Other countries cannot do because their currency is completely tied to foreign exchange dynamics and geopolitical dynamics.
Yeah, or debt.
Well, money is debt.
Yeah. Yeah, the fiat money is dead. Yeah. If you look at the way, another incorrect thing about this idea of inflation that we were talking about is money isn't actually printed by the Federal Reserve. It's actually like a negotiation between, I haven't been able to demystify how money, there's actually a book, it's called The Mystery of Banking by Rothbard, and banking is how the government or the Federal Reserve actually issues currency is such a complicated and subjective thing because they're always, like, aren't they raising rates today or something like that? They're going to make some decision that affects the fucking planet. Isn't that not too much power, I think, for just a small group? Yeah, it's magic. They call Bitcoin magic money. Look at that, dude. Like, the alchemists are here. They're real. They make gold all the time. Anyways.
So there's something to add there that the Swiss franc, the New Zealand dollar, the Canadian dollar, and the Israeli shekel are all printed in Switzerland. So there's companies, private
Yeah, and I think aren't they all backed by US dollar, which is also proportionally backed by some sort of gold reserve? I mean, it's like a hierarchy. That's why I'd like to finish the fiat standard by the Bitcoin standard guy. Yeah, Saifedean. Just to get like a better understanding of that. Anyways, anything else?
Ethereum merge.
Ethereum merge. Yeah. Where's Leo?
Well, today they did a successful merge on the Kill test network.
Yeah, Ethereum could be a deflationary currency.
Yep.
If it's a currency.
Let's see.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Anybody want to say anything?
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Yeah?
Hard question. What would you change in Bitcoin to make it better money then?
Nothing.
Nothing at all. Zero.
I try to get my parents to think about it a little bit more. I'm still working on that though. But you know, what I think about is, don't go up, go down. Okay. Don't try to help those who I think are older than you, because I found people who have, they have like their monetary wealth or savings, and they're quite secure in that. And these are people who have had a lot of time to generate more wealth, and they're now in a position where they are comfortable with what they have, and they don't want to disrupt it. Therefore, their risk is less when it comes to investing or making other decisions. The people who have less have a greater risk tolerance to invest and take chances. They also have greater time to reap the rewards, and also if those chances have failures, they can also, take more chances later. So I think it's always better to convince younger people than it is older people who have a lot of things, which is why my parents won't change. But my brother-in-law, he should buy Bitcoin years ago. He never did it. Yeah, anyways, I gave him some for his wedding, but whatever.
The most important thing about actually Bitcoin is like to be a decentralized currency. And now that there is a lot of whales and that control a lot of wallets, and like as somebody said, like US and China has most of it. Like, so a lot of people they said, well, it failed in this to be decentralized.
You're talking about wealth distribution not being fair?
Like to control the market, it's not decentralized. People can manipulate the market, manipulate the whole thing. Actually.
I don't know. I've been hearing about whales for a long time, and I almost think that it's like a mythos to describe what's happening in the market. It's like, oh, the whales did something. It's like, yeah, someone may have moved something, or yeah, they're suppressing the price, but I don't really feel like it's important because it's all price discovery. It's like Bitcoin is, in my opinion, an honest system, including the whales, and that this discovery of price is constantly happening. You can't escape it. You can't. You can whine and cry about it, but it's not going to do anything.
But
Just
90% of the Bitcoins are exchanged through institutions. It's not you and me. It's institutions. So these institutions are the Morgan Stanleys, are the
yeah, and isn't that what we wanted? Institutional adoption. When it came to like Bitcoiners, that's like every Bitcoiner's dream was institutional adoption. I think there is one question though with.
Manipulation. It goes back to manipulation.
Well, I don't know. This guy might have a rebuttal to your answer.
I don't agree. There's no manipulation if you accumulate Bitcoin. Well, it could be some manipulation, like temporarily, if some whale dumps the price or whatever.
Yeah.
But you made a good argument before. Why governments don't print a lot of money and buy Bitcoin?
Yeah.
If they could do that, they accumulate Bitcoin, but that doesn't give you power over the network. No. That doesn't give you power over consensus. Not because the consensus is distributed across the nodes of the.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is always only going to produce the same blocks as like a clock, and you can't force it to mine more blocks faster to get more rewards. So it's like, unlike gold or silver, if you want more gold and silver, we can all head west and go and try to discover more gold or dig up the earth. But in Bitcoin, you can't do that because of the way it's designed, right? You have the difficulty. Yeah.
Just to remark the first one regarding
Yeah. Well, when you talk about bombing countries for gold, in the U.S. we had gold confiscation, which is hard to believe it was a real thing. They said that for the benefit of everyone, you need to put your gold in the Federal Reserve Bank, and we're going to give everybody these certificates that are redeemable. I mean, the trust was broken over and over and over and over again, to the point where I guess you had like Occupy Wall Street. There's a mix of ideas happening there, and then Bitcoin gave us an option, or at least whoever wanted to opt out, we now have a choice that we can choose Bitcoin over the other monetary systems. But again, I don't know. I just still don't use Bitcoin to pay for coffee or anything like that. So again, you would have to have this sort of structure where majority of your store of wealth might be in something that maintains its store of value over a long period of time, and have a small basket that you use to interact with the local currency wherever you're living, if that makes sense. So you would have to structure your finances in that kind of manner. Yeah.
What about you mentioned about the energy, and obviously all these cryptocurrencies, they consume energy as much as countries. So we're creating new countries now. Kazakhstan had power outages until they stopped mining. It's becoming legal. They're cutting down on mining in Kazakhstan because
Yeah.
I know someone who lives there and who had power outage because of Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
So,
but that could be a deeper. It could go. I'm sure it's something with oil somewhere. Something. No energy.
Oil is disappearing anyway.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah.
Is disappearing. Only war is going to bring it up.
I'm not sure. I always liked the idea that if we were to issue money, there has to be a cost, right? So if it's gold, again, you have the cost of exploiting the planet, the natural territory for it, or something like Bitcoin, like what they did in El Salvador, is build a renewable plant that's outside of the city, that's transferring renewable geothermal energy in minting Bitcoins or getting the rewards. And
to build that plant, how many,
yeah, but that's
commodities are coming from extracting the planet. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're producing energy, I'm sorry, I cut you, but energy production is we haven't got a clear green way of doing it.
No, that's right.
Solar energy, we run energy. So the issue is this, is that if energy is money, because that's what Bitcoin essentially is, that Bitcoin value proposition, right?
Right.
You're putting in energy and you're getting your Bitcoin. What does that mean at a time where clearly energy is on the rise? And because now it's energy arbitrage. Like if I'm in Texas or if I'm in Kazakhstan and it's more lucrative to mine Bitcoin rather than supply energy to neighborhoods where they can't afford high prices of energy, where are we going? And I think that's an issue where that we have to face. I think a lot of the shortcomings of Bitcoins are yet to be seen, because it's unfair, for example, to compare Bitcoin to gold. It's not unfair for Bitcoin, it's unfair for gold. Gold has been a truly meaningful and hegemonic form of financial wealth. And as such, it has been the subject of struggles and political moves and war moves that Bitcoin doesn't really have to face right now. And once Bitcoin actually becomes whatever the Bitcoin advocates believe it can become, then we shall see what happens in terms of geopolitics around it, and what will be the pressures on the environment and everything.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just magic money. I'm sorry, and I don't mean it in a degrading way, but from the perspective of the powers that are, not the powers that be later on. It's just like right now, China can ban crypto. The US can do whatever they want. They may be not printing. They're not all buying Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, they've got the guns. It doesn't matter what we believe is sound money. Ultimately, there's a point where force matters. And the people that have the guns right now don't need to have Bitcoin because they've got the guns.
That's why we need guns. That's my next. Yeah.
My point is that I feel that in the crypto sphere, maybe less in Bitcoin, it's maybe more also in Ethereum, but there's some kind of naivety in thinking that you can opt out of a system that is so powerful and a system that actually has issuing debt at an interest, right? And thinking that you can just build something better and it's we can all move away is not reading history properly. Sorry.
Well, my argument was always that Bitcoin incentivizes the production of cheap renewable energies, and also away from cities where majority of electricity is consumed, because you can actually only send electricity a certain distance. So now imagine that you can produce Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies outside of the city. It's generating wealth without taxing on the energy grid of the city. So, well, I mean, like something that's producing energy, but it's not enough to where it's efficient enough to actually bring it into the city. I'm going to take a question over here. Yeah.
I have a question. It's a bit deep going, but maybe you heard about it. A friend of mine is a blockchain developer. Looked at the Bitcoin code, and as most people, I guess, know, the first million coins are owned by Satoshi Nakamoto. They never moved on the chain, and he saw in the code that those first million coins are preferred in the selling process or in the transfer process, and that he explained to me. And I'm pro Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. He said that could be an exit scam. Meaning, if Satoshi Nakamoto drops 1 million coins all at the same time or over a short period of time.
We have a Satoshi expert, Nick.
We don't fork, bro.
Oh.
I'm just going to say, if that wallet moves, the network's going to fork. The real decentralization is the 18,000 or so nodes and miners out there in Europe who decide, fuck it, that wallet's bad, right? So we go back to consensus.
What if it's 1,000 wallets or whatever?
The wallets themselves, it's irrespective. It's a consensus, much like money. Like I give you a 10 euro bill. We have a social contract and a consensus globally. Those are 10 euros, and I can buy beer with those 10 euros. Tomorrow it could be 1,000 sats. And if the Bitcoin we see now, much like Ethereum did some years ago after the DAO, if we collectively decide as a decentralized network to go in our direction, you flag it like Taproot, like Segwit. Segwit, big block wars, go look into that. There are, 7 versions of Bitcoin now?
All fake, basically. All the forks fake, basically.
Well, that's the point, because it's the longest fork that lives, much like all that money out there. There are people in the world, you can go and buy rubles from 1922, right? You can go buy the Deutschmark, you can buy the 1 million Zimbabwean dollar, but it's a piece of paper. And what changes is the time. There was a time when that piece of paper was worth a lot of money. You could buy a mansion in Zimbabwe. You could trade it for $100 US. Now it is symbolic. So I've got plenty of shit coins which are not going anywhere from forks. I think a lot of people here might have old Bitcoin wallets and go, oh shit, go look back. You might be able to claim Bitcoin gold.
Ooh, 23 cents.
It's a narrative. Like I share a narrative that I'm happy to take my beer in Ethereum here. And I probably will spend more euros worth of gas to send that money to them. But I'm one of those idiots who used it as a currency first. So, and fight me for it, bro.
We need guns. Anything? Lorenzo?
So I have a question, but we all kind of channel all our energy, let's say, or value in money. What if instead of one economic value, we can have different values? As in society, there are different ways of different capitals. Say there is social capital, ecological capital, spiritual capital, whatever. There is a lot of them. And there is actually, I will see, 8 form of capital, I think is the book, where they mention there are other ways to value, I don't know how to call them, have values in society in different ways.
Yeah, I lived in New York. Cultural capital was like, if you couldn't achieve monetary capital, you could always achieve cultural capital living in New York. And it was like this competition of, oh, I went to that exhibition, or I went to that art show, and just, I know so-and-so. It's like the capital of cool or something. It sounds very ad busters, but it's a real thing.
Instagram likes, Twitter followers.
Yeah, now there's probably that, right?
What if our current way of looking at capital is a bit limited, and we need to look forward another level, another whole dimension of stuff, like spread is good or bad. It's just this has this value or not. Can we evaluate other stuff instead of just money?
I think the only thing you could probably do is take the characteristics and functions of money and apply that as a lens to understanding culture. I think that's kind of what you're describing, whereas I don't think you'll be able to derive a store of value out of that. Probably a medium of exchange, but that's a relationship, right? So there's probably, yeah, I'm sure there's something there. I've never heard of that book, but I imagine it intersects or relates to a lot of the information in what is sound money or hard money.
Society is much complex than
Yeah.
just one way of value from 0 to 10 or whatever value there is. We have a lot of different layers that there are not being accounted.
Yeah, this is actually very Austrian, to be honest. Yeah, the Austrians, they say like, so Marx had this idea that you could measure the value of certain things based on the labor that was put into it. And the Austrians were saying, no, that's not true, it's subjective. The person who wants it or desires it the most, that's what gives it its value. So it's subjective. And that's like with NFTs. It's like, why is this NFT worth so much? Well, it's because people decided. And that was, again, there's like value or information, and is it a store of value? Might not be a secure one, but it's a subjective cost that people use to measure, is it worth me for me to purchase this? And it's also a social thing, and there's information in it. There's well, I don't know. But anyways, the Austrians, they were like that. And also another interesting Austrian thing was, it wasn't the sum of the parts, it was when things were assembled together. So it's like if you had a factory and the equipment and the people, but you're not doing anything with it, you actually don't have the value. The value is actually in the action that's taking place with the composition of these units. And that gets back into the sort of energy or labor or output through our actions. And so I think the origins of money come from human action. That's the argument anyways. So
maybe say Austrian School of Economics.
Austrian School of Economics?
For people like...
well, it's
Do you understand what you mean by Austrian?
Yeah, the Austrian School of Economics, well, yeah, maybe another time. No, it's interesting because there's kind of a revival of these economic thoughts, right? Because I think now with cryptocurrency, more people are waking up like, wait, what is cryptocurrency? And they ask questions like, well, how does it have any value? And I notice with my friends that trying to get them in, they have these arguments, and basically they're asking one question, and it's the what is money? And so I kind of wish I had done a better job presenting this, but when I'm engaged with a person trying to tell them or convince them that, well, what are the benefits of crypto or helping them understand it, it's always good to explain, try to, like, who am I? I'm not the authority on what is money, but to give them some insight for them to have a sort of comprehension of what is money or value. And it's really super important if you want to go from that to understanding Bitcoin. You basically have to ask the foundational question, what is money? Yeah.
One note here, there's a very good YouTube video for free by Mike Maloney, and it's called The Hidden Secrets of Money, where it's basically an 8 or 9 part documentary where he explains very well, I think, what money is and how it changed civilizations and how it made civilizations go past like the Roman Empire.
Are you in the Telegram group for Ethereum Barcelona?
I'm not sure.
Or Akasha Hub? If you join here, please put that video in the group, and I'm sure some people would be interested in seeing that.
It's on goldsilver.com.
If I find out it's some Marxist garbage, I'm going to be real mad.
It's a good resource to learn about what is money.
Yeah.
I want to just kind of make a call to action, everyone. There's a concept in general that you put your money and it's used for stuff, right? The US dollar is used for activities by the US government and people using the US dollar. The ruble, as we well know, is sanctioned now and all this kind of stuff. So we live in a time with, what, a couple of hundred national currencies, 50 or so currency experiments around the world, fiat, and several thousand cryptocurrencies, precious metals, pieces of paper that represent precious metals, pieces of paper represent those pieces of paper that represent those precious metals. So make your choices, right? Think about the value, those values that we noted, like the 3 factors and the characteristics of money, and make your choices for your future.
Yeah, one of the old original monies was actually backed by grain because starvation was probably more important than the gold itself. Because is gold going to have value if we all starve to death? I'm not saying that's why they used it, but it's just an interesting thought that they're measuring their food supply is what has actual value in their economy, and that's probably because they were closer to starvation or less food a long time ago, and not the abundance that we have today.
It's got the properties. So again, to have another tradition, which is also very economically focused, which is the Sharia of the Muslim. I think the term money is confusing. I think we should.
Yeah, you mentioned that it wasn't in the.
But my point is that it's gold, silver, barley, and other seeds, because it is fungible, because you can store it, and all those properties you said. And ultimately, when two parties or more enter into a transaction, for the transaction to be free, there has to be consensus. And there's usually a consensus that at some point you're going to need food. and I think also today we live in a society where we've been served some form of myth of progress. I mean, we live in a society that's all geared towards progress. And core to it and the economic understanding that we have is this idea that we've moved from agrarian societies to industrial societies, and now we're in service, and that's like fourth revolution, IR. But at the end of the day, every major power, US, China, Russia, Europe, are all the biggest producer of food. I mean, we don't move away from agriculture.
Yeah.
I mean, because agriculture remains the basis of the economy. Because agriculture, food is our energy. You do need electricity for the comfort, but you can live without electricity. Now try fasting, for longer than 3 days, and then you're gonna wish you could, give your Bitcoin, give your plants, whatever. You need food, and food still remains the basis. And I think there's, we kind of live in a society where they've kind of abstracted the realities, the core realities of our lives, and to go back to your point,
Yeah.
It's not primitive. My point is not primitive to consider, food and seeds as money. It just makes sense, and it still makes sense today, even though in our societies we're so protected and privileged that we kind of forget that this is still the basis. But you start your day with food.
Yeah, I was thinking with the refrigerator. Like everybody probably has a refrigerator, but that's kind of an amazing property of food storage. So now you have food that can last it's portable over time, these foods. Or a freezer. Freezers are really incredible. You can throw something in there and eat it, 3 months, 6 months later. Or it's kind of interesting, right? And that requires energy, right? So there's like this energy layer that's preserving your food over a long period of time, which was kind of the encryption that stores all the Bitcoin on the network. It's interesting because, food and, well, anyways. Anybody have any other thoughts like to share?
I have one
Yeah.
about generation. I have a kid, he's 16, and a couple of weeks ago he was skiing somewhere, and then he called me early in the morning. He said, "Dad, get my shitty, dirty cash of my wardrobe and get me some Bitcoin." It's like, okay, it's early. Are you okay? Yeah, but why? I said, Russia invaded Ukraine. Buy all of it. All right. So, 16 years old, so cynic. First thought in the morning before going skiing with his friends, understanding the volatility of Bitcoin and what's happening in the world. And I was very impressed. I actually did it. I took his cash and I bought his Bitcoin and kept with it. And he made some money in 1 day already. He made some profit in 1 day already, and he was happy as well. So I think we are wondering a lot of things, but this generation, they're more on
like a crypto native, digital native, these,
They don't even, they say it's actually dirty. It doesn't want to do everything.
Yeah, there's actually, it's that's why I say it's probably better to educate the people who are younger than to go up. It's.
I was just mentioning.
But you said. But you said he thought the money was dirty, like the dirty euros.
He actually said it 2 times. It's dirty. The
Yeah.
actual cash.
There's a
You know, from the grandfather gave the cash every Christmas, and he had this cash, and then this is there too.
Oh, you're an honest dad not to take that. No, but there was a law. So when money was in circulation, there was a guy who studied it. He said that the pure money would actually disappear from circulation. And that was interesting. So it's like people were ending up using bad money. And you still see it. If you pay for cash, like you go to, I don't know, people take cabs or even pay with cash anymore. You know when you have like a crisp, I don't know, 50 euro bill or whatever, and you have to break it. You don't really want to because it's crisp. And you break it, and now you have like a 5, and it's kind of like crumpled up. You want to get rid of those. And the reason they gave you those is kind of like they want to get rid of those as well. But it was a law that someone had observed with money that was in circulation, that the most pure monies would actually disappear because they ended up being a store of value, and the filth would actually end up back on the market. Yeah. This was back when money was private and there was lots of different currencies that people could use and a mix. And also that gold coins would actually lose value over time. They would be debased because people would scrape a little bit off. It was actually Isaac Newton was the guy who came up with the idea of putting the rivets on the edge of a coin to prevent the sort of debasement, which was kind of interesting. Yeah.
He was the master of the mint.
He was what?
Newton was master of the mint. He was one of the highest officials in
yeah, that's right.
Not just the scientist, he literally was.
Yeah, he was in the royal, yeah. I guess that's time out. Yeah. Well, anyways, thanks you guys for putting up with my presentation, and then the conversation was really good. Anybody have any announcements or anything they want to share or anything? Yeah, I'll share the presentation as a PDF maybe. It'll be in the group, the Telegram group for Ethereum Barcelona.
Oh.